So we had a unique Grand Prix, with the qualifying result determining the final order after no racing laps. There isn't a lot to talk about, so did we learn anything from the Belgian Grand Prix? Let's have a look. My name's Andy and this is Behind the Drive. To be honest, after the race was postponed, with the wet weather and the situation looking like there'd be no racing at all, I went to the pub. My view of the situation was that there could be no option for a proper Grand Prix, and lo and behold, there wasn't, as the cars were paraded around behind the safety car with literally zero overtaking opportunities. There wasn't a lot that we learned, but here's my ramble anyway. It's time for change at Eau Rouge. First up, it's a red box for the Eau Rouge / Raidillon section of the circuit. Over the weekend of so-called racing, we've seen yet more crashes, and those that have been particularly scary, especially in the wet weather conditions. The barriers at these corners are simply unsuitable in the state that they're in right now. Cars that end up hitting the barrier often get directed back across the racing line, which makes it more likely that a car following would end up being forced to take evasive action to avoid a more serious incident. The high-speed corner has been the site of some horrendous crashes in the past, and it feels as though the FIA and the circuit have taken long enough to learn from Antoine Hubert's fatal crash in 2019. But now is the time for change. There are plans to add the gravel traps back into the corner as there was in the 90s, as well as extending the runoff areas. This does worry me slightly, just because of the high-speed nature of the corner and the tendency for cars to flip over when they go into a gravel trap, particularly if they go in sideways. But at the same time, the gravel would act as a deterrent for driving too quickly through that section of the circuit. Hopefully the increased runoff would also help to increase the safety of the corner and make it less likely that a car would be rebounded off the track back into the circuit. When it came to qualifying, a few of the drivers going into Q3 were calling for the session to be red flagged, but it took another huge shunt to make that happen, as Lando Norris ended up spinning across the circuit in yet another incident at that same corner. Sebastian Vettel was particularly vocal on the radio regarding the red flag, and was the first driver on the scene as he slowed down to almost a stop until he had the thumbs up from Norris to confirm that the British driver was okay. I have no doubt that he would have pulled up and got out to see what he could do to help the Brit if he hadn't had that confirmation from Norris, which would have meant sacrificing his own qualifying session in the process and would have abandoned his car at Raidillon and have been unable to get it restarted without his mechanics. It was amazing to see that level of care for his fellow drivers, and I think we can all agree that Vettel simply does the right thing in every situation. My issue with this circuit is that it's taken a long time to see some change, and every time there's a race at this track, I worry that we'll see a horrific incident, particularly at the start of the Grand Prix, when all of the drivers are heading into that section of the circuit. The race decision to essentially red flag the whole event was completely justified as a result of this risk, so if I'm honest, I'm glad it worked out in the way that it did. The Mercedes seat is signed, sealed, delivered. George Russell, take a bow and have a green box. To put his Williams car on the front row on Saturday shows just how far this team has come. To me, the trajectory of where this team is headed suggests that they'll be on the right path for 2022, and drivers that are looking for an opportunity should see Williams as a realistic option. George Russell's immense talent has been on display here this weekend, and it resulted in his first ever podium. It won't have been in the way that the driver would have wanted, but regardless, he ended up on that podium in a Williams car that is at best the 8th fastest car on the grid. 9 points that were well deserved for that British driver. In terms of what this means for the Mercedes seat, well, Toto Wolff did say on Saturday that the decision had been made already. He even hinted in an interview with Sky that the performance on Saturday confirmed that it was the right call, and that George is a talented driver. So it seems to me like it's only a matter of time for Russell to be confirmed at that team, and they're probably just being respectful to Bottas and waiting to see that he's confirmed a seat for 2022 before any announcements are made. It's a really exciting time though, as George Russell is a really talented driver and has proved that this weekend by out-qualifying both Mercedes cars. What a performance. It's difficult to comment on anything else, other than the fact that the FIA did something that nobody wanted to do today and essentially cancel a Grand Prix. I really hope that the fans that came to the Grand Prix were offered full refunds, as they saw no competitive action on Sunday. But really it shows that the FIA are cautious and are not willing to gamble with the drivers' lives. It really is the most sensible option given the circumstances. Maybe it's worth calling out the likes of Daniel Ricciardo for ending up 4th in his McLaren, or Sebastian Vettel for coming 5th, or Pierre Gasly for finishing 6th. But really there wasn't much that we learned other than the fact that the FIA did the right thing for the safety of these drivers. It's a different one for me, as it is for everyone, but that's what I learned from an absent Belgian Grand Prix. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments, and I hope you stay tuned for the next race in the Netherlands, where I hope that the 5 Things We Learned series will return. Thanks for watching.